There's a story about a man called Job, and it's a very interesting story. I say it's interesting because it often causes a lot of confusion about who God is and the nature of God and the nature of our relationship with Him, as well as Satan, because Satan is in the mix of the story. If you don't know the story, I'll just briefly tell it to you. Job is described as a man who was very successful by every metric. He had a lot of wealth, and he also had a lot of children. He had a good home, a happy family, a good wife. Job had everything that a man could ask for, and by extension, he had honor. He was respected. So the story says that one day there is a meeting that takes place, a conversation that takes place in the spiritual realm where God and Satan are having a conversation, and God says, "Have you seen my servant Job?" Because Job was not just successful, Job also loved God and he feared God, he honored God. He's described as a man who was righteous. And God speaks on that. God highlights that. God notices and acknowledges Job's righteousness and Job's devotion to Him. And as he points this to Satan, Satan says, well, that's because he has everything. Of course he loves you. Of course he's faithful because he has everything, which is very common to what a lot of us say when we see someone who's doing well. Of course you would talk about God and how good God is because you've got everything. He's given you everything. Why wouldn't you love God? And by the way, it's a misunderstanding, and I'll clear that up in just a moment. It's a common error of judgment that we make in relation to our relationship with God. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But God then says to Satan, okay, if you think Job is only faithful because of the stuff he has, then take away everything he has and see if he won't remain faithful. Satan says, bet, goes away and takes everything. In one day, Job loses everything. His wealth is wiped out. He loses all of his children. He loses his workers. He loses everything that he owned in a single day. And the response of Job is a very shocking one because he says, you know what? I came into this world naked and I'm going to leave naked. God gave me everything that I had and He has taken it away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. He's not shaken. And then there is another convening that takes place in the spiritual realm where God says, have you seen Job? He's still at it. Job is still going strong. Even after you caused me to harm him without purpose. Satan, have you seen him? He's still holding on. And Satan says, well, of course, he's got good health. Take away his health and see if he doesn't curse you. God says, well, go ahead then. Do anything you want with his health, just don't take his life. And Satan says, very well, goes away and harms him. In a moment, Job is afflicted with an illness and he finds himself sitting in the dirt and scraping himself because he had these sores that covered his body. And it got to the point where even his wife said, why don't you just curse God and die? Why are you still holding on to your faith like this? And Job says, listen, you've spoken like a foolish woman. Should we only accept good things from God and not the bad? And now, with this story, if you are not careful, you might interpret the story as, Satan is always after my stuff. Satan is always attacking my stuff. The other day it was a tire. Now I've got to pay for the fridge. And then they broke into my house. Satan is just after my stuff. God protect my stuff. But the whole purpose of Satan taking away his health and his wealth and everything else, the whole purpose is Satan is after Job's faith. The story of Job is not the story of how Satan attacks us in order to take away our stuff, our possessions. It's a story of how Satan attacks you for a single purpose, to take away your faith. The reason I say this is because for a lot of people, their devotion is to their stuff. And so when your devotion is to your money, when your devotion is to your car, to your apartment that you just bought, when so much of your affection and your devotion and your worship is directed towards stuff, when Satan reaches out and harms you in that area, takes away whatever it is that you have, you are left in a position where you now curse God. Because why? I've lost the one thing that had my devotion. And so the whole point was that Satan was trying to get Job to curse God. It wasn't about his stuff. And so for as long as Job was holding on to his faith and still loving God, Satan was losing. The enemy was losing. As long as he still had his faith, he still had everything. And we know that he still had everything because at the end of the story, Job had everything returned back to him. It says he had twice as much as what he had lost before, right? So he had way more than what he started with, way more than what he had lost. So it's very important to understand this, that when you are attacked, it is not for the sake of attacking your stuff. It's not about your laptop. It's not about your relationship. Satan doesn't really care about your marriage. It's about your faith. So if he can attack your marriage so that you can lose your faith, he will do exactly that. You understand what I'm saying? So it's very important that we will have a proper perspective of the challenges that we have on a daily basis, that you will understand that the challenges you have are not just as they appear. It's about your faith. And the day that you lose your faith is the day that you lose the battle. As long as you're holding on to your faith, you are still in the fight. As long as you keep your faith strong, I will even dare to say, my friend, you are winning.